Can we get another round of applause for Mayor Medina, please, for having us here in his city? This next session I'm very excited about, and you should be very excited about, because Sir Tim Berners-Lee changed our lives forever when he invented the World Wide Web nearly 30 years ago. And it has something that we cannot imagine our world without. For many of us, access to the internet is a basic human right. Nearly, or actually, half of the world is connected. And as connected people, we need to be asking ourselves and each other, how can we get the other half online? Here to discuss that with us today is the inventor of the World Wide Web, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, and president of Google.org, Jacquelline Fuller.
Well, hello, everyone. What an honor it is to be here with my friend, Sir Tim Berners-Lee. And we are going to have just a relaxed conversation this morning. But Tim, I think it might be most helpful to just start with a little bit of level setting. So since you founded the web in 1989, it's changed quite a bit. What do you think are the causes for celebration? And what gives you a little pause or concern?
Well, I think one of the questions I had yesterday was, hey, if you could turn this thing off, if you could just rewind the web and not have ever done it, would you, do you think it'd be better without the web? Actually, no. Actually, I think there is a huge amount of good and a huge amount of creativity, a huge amount of collaboration that does happen. That was what it was originally designed for. Things concerned about, I mean, everybody, you know what you're concerned about the web. Fake news, people are concerned about private data, people are concerned about the fact that the system takes everybody's private data and then can manipulate them. People are concerned about the fact that a lot of the people out there aren't people, they are fake people. They are in fake communities with fake websites, all put together to create the illusion of a reality in which some particular untruth is being promoted. So lots of things which are issues with the web at the moment. So that's why, to a certain extent, we've talked recently about a mid-course correction and introducing this contract for the web.
And yesterday, you and the Web Foundation rolled out the For the Web campaign, and we know that we're at this 50-50 moment. We're about there, with half connected, half not. So also leading the charge to get the next 50% connected. But as you have thought about expanding access, you've also put forward the contract for the web to make sure that we're doing so under a good framework with the right principles. For those who haven't heard of the contract for the web, what's its essence? What's most important?
Oh yeah, put your hand up if you were not at the session where we introduced the contract for the web. Okay, so this is the contract for the web. So, thanks. So, the idea of the contract for the web is that going forward, we've got two issues, if you like, two massive issues. One is half the world aren't connected. We need to bring them online as quickly as possible. We need to tackle affordability. We need to make sure that also women get online and take advantage of online as well as men, for example. We need to look at all the various reasons like illiteracy, all the different reasons why people aren't, or if they have potentially access to the web, why they don't use it. So that's about the concern about half of the world which does not. But then looking at the half of the world which does have access to the web, does use the web, it has all these issues. And so we felt that to actually fix a lot of these issues, partly these are things which you can do yourself as an individual. You can just be less hateful online. You can try to make contact with people who are more different from yourself, not just hang out with the same people, but reach out to people who have a slightly different culture. So there are things you can do yourself. There's things governments can do to make sure that, for example, the citizens have open access to the web. make sure that they don't put unreasonable taxes on the web. And there's things that big companies can do. So the contract, in fact, is about governments, companies, and individuals. And it's you can look it up on the web, webfoundation.org/fortheweb, and contractfortheweb.org. You can also, if you head out kind of that way, head out and veer right, look for the Web Foundation, check out the Web Foundation stand, and there you can sign up to say that you support the Web Foundation, the contract for the web, and you can also do that online, of course. And since we talked about it last night, we've had 1,000 people sign up. So it's picking up. And it's all a big discussion. You know, the contract for the web isn't finished. It's when you sign up to join in the discussion.
That's right. And at Google, we're really proud to support the contract for the web and have really enjoyed the process working with the Web Foundation over the years. A wonderful partnership. So I want to pick up on something that you mentioned specifically, which is this aspect of gender inequality when it comes to access. So we already know that even right now at this moment, there's a gender gap. But as we move closer and closer, the gap is actually getting bigger. And one of the things that you explained last night is the more we do to empower people through the web, the more the digital divide grows with those who are unconnected. So what do you think are the best strategies for making sure that we get the most disadvantaged connected, and especially women and girls?
The problem of getting women and girls into tech and has been just a huge one. And so in other words, it's one of the things which has been clear, both sort of from being part of institutions like MIT and University of Oxford. At MIT, trying to get women into tech, to a certain extent, largely at the undergraduate level. You can succeed at the undergraduate level because lots and lots of bright women are taking computer science degrees, but then to actually make sure that all of the levels, including leadership of the university, is really hard. You have to make sure that at any point, if there are women who have been persuaded to drop out to have children, actually to say to them, no, that's not a thing. You don't. Having children and being in tech are completely independent parts of your personality. So finding all the different ways in which women drop out is really hard. It's not as though there's a silver bullet, as though you can say, oh yeah, we fixed that. You have to make sure all the way through. You have to do it at kindergarten when they give the more technical robot toys to the boys first. Wrong. Rewind that. So that's why I love the Afghan girls robot club or whatever it was that they've signed up. So, constant awareness wherever you are that you're not accidentally doing something which will make it slightly easier for a guy to do, to progress to the next step. Make sure that if anything, you're giving special, making special point of pointing out to the girl that actually this is for them too.
Yeah, Google's done some research on this to try to understand the difference in college graduation rates in computer science. And I know when my daughter was majoring in computer science in college, for example, it just comes down to things like what problem sets are assigned. And in her intro to CS class, it was 40% women when they started, but by the end, half had dropped. But it came down to simple things like the problem sets were things like poker or war games or winning on Wall Street. But schools have figured this out. Carnegie Mellon's done a very good job, for example, and Berkeley, for example. And the problem sets are more things like how would you use computational thinking to reduce infant mortality in Kenya? These are problem sets that I think engage the mind in different ways. So sometimes it's just small pragmatic steps, isn't it, in order to address the tech imbalance. But how about the access imbalance? When we think about just access to the internet, you talk about having very smart, gender-forward policies. I wonder if you can expand on that a bit.
Yes, I suppose the Web Foundation spent a lot of time looking at just getting people online. And before that, the Web Consortium doing the standards had the mobile web initiatives, realizing back in the day when we were all using desktops and laptops to code the web, they were trying to persuade people building websites, actually, there's going to be a huge number of people coming down the line who are going to be using mobile. So mobile is going to be a thing. So now we all know that mobile is a thing. And then when you actually go, you hear these anecdotes of when you go into an African village where there's only one person who's got the phone, guess what? It's a guy. And guess what? The women are actually organizing the village. They could really use the ability to communicate with other people, and the guy sitting there with the phone as his status symbol. That's a bit of a classic, maybe unfair picture, but those are the sorts of stories you get back that basically, for some reason, for social reasons, for one reason or another, the women don't end up actually holding the phone in their hands. And that also, the anecdotal evidence is that if a woman has a phone, the effect on the economy of the family, of the village, of the country, and the world is greater than if the guy does. So lots of reasons for pushing women.
Lots of reasons and lots of ways to address it. So Tim, switching gears a little bit, you've also recently come out with Solid, a new initiative. And as we talked about last night, one of the core principles of the contract is making sure that companies respect users' data, privacy. At Google, we've long had a takeout policy where users can get their data. I think we were the
9 years.
Yeah, 9 years. That's right.
That, yeah.
Yeah. One of the first to do so. Others in the tech industry are coming along there. But how do you envision Solid helping users to migrate their data to different services, still staying in touch with those whom they want to stay in touch with? So how will this decentralized web work, and what do you think are some of the challenges?
Ooh, lots of questions, lots of challenges. I don't know if we have time for all the challenges, but so here's roughly how it works. Okay, so warning, paradigm shift coming. This is different to the way the web works at the moment. So, but it is just the web. So the idea of Solid is that you have storage places. You can think of it, like you have Box.net and Dropbox and X.box and Y.box. You have all these places where you can store your data, where traditionally they just store your data, then they don't monetize your data, they don't spy on your data. Or you can fire up a Raspberry Pi at home with a little disk on it, and you can store your data there. So there's lots and lots of places in which you can store your data. And we changed the way the apps work. So you take the app, you rip out the back end. I had a complaint from a back-end programmer saying, you're taking all the back-end programming out of the web, with Solid. That's an issue. Well, don't worry, there's plenty of work working on the servers. But what you do with an app is you rip out the back-end and you make it just talk to a generic Solid pod using the Solid API, which is just one API. So the Solid spec is you use HTTP and you use a few things on top of HTTP and you use the access control specs. And so what we have is this one API. All the Solid apps, when they start, of course they don't actually have their own storage because we separated the apps from the storage. When they start, they say, hey, where would you like me? You've taken these roll of film. Where do you want me to store? And you go, okay, I took this roll of film for work, so I'm going to store it on the work pod that I share with everybody. And I will share it with all the people at work. But it's not as though the work pod is a silo. No Solid pod is a silo. Any Solid pod does open access control. It allows you to give read or write access, or append or control access to anything. You can take a particular photo, you can take a particular database, you can say, this particular person over here, this is my cousin who might be interested in this particular photo. You can and give them access. So Solid is about storing data in places where you have complete control. It's about but also it's about complete control over sharing. You control which people and which groups, and if you want, which organizations. So organizations can come in and say, we have this great AI system which is going to do really good things with your data. If you join, we'll either pay you money or you'll get the benefit of it. So you can also let AI systems out there look at the data but you don't have to, and by default you haven't. So the default is all of your data only is accessible to you, and then you have the delight of sharing it. So very different world, separating apps from data. If you've been building, if you're building the full stack, JavaScript through to PHP, or for all these years, well, guys, girls, you're going to have to get used to now building those as completely separate pieces.
So picking up, you mentioned AI assistants for an example. I mean, at Google, we're very bullish about, very optimistic about the power of AI, but also want to ensure that the power of AI and machine learning is available for everyone. And so we launched this week a $25 million AI for Impact Challenge, open to anyone in the world to apply. What do you think about the power of AI ML? Is it overblown? Do you see great benefits coming down? What are some of the challenges we all, as a community, need to be aware of with AI?
Ooh, that's a whole, I'm not an expert. Me, even knowing the little I know, there's an awful lot to go in there. First of all, AI, there's a huge amount of really interesting stuff in AI to come. And anyway, because in a way, artificial intelligence is a label for all the things that we would love computers to be able to do that they can't do at the moment. So it's a very, very open field. Do not think that AI is just machine learning. Okay, that said, even if you look at machine learning is something which very much which nowadays should be, you should be able to apply pretty much, you can get it off the shelf, you can unplug it, you can go and watch those videos on the web and apply machine learning to your own data, and you can find patterns, you can find new patterns in that data all by yourself. To a certain extent, yes, we do need a lot of education about how to use machine learning tools, just like people learn how to use databases and things, I suppose. But remember that AI is a lot more. But also at the same time, because not all AI, but an awful lot of AI uses a lot of data. So a lot of it is about analysis of huge amounts of data. Imagine if you're in a solid world where everybody owns their own data, then how do we get the most use out of that? Supposing I'm one of a whole bunch of musicians and music lovers, and we've all formed this, we've got these apps which allow us to trade what we're listening to, and we've got these apps which allow us to do collaborative filtering, like Last.fm, if you remember that. These things which allow me to, I can just listen to a radio stream like my favorite person, and we do that because we've got a big mesh of all the things that different people like, and so the AI system can deduce and suggest to me what I probably should listen to next. How can we do that? How can we as a community build that, create the AI to create that knowledge about how likes and artists and genres all interconnect in a way that preserves the privacy of all the people? Do we extract the data from people's private pods, run it in a trusted environment? Do we run AI through encryption? Actually, do we do clever zero-knowledge proofs where you can use very sophisticated techniques to be able to do the computation on the data, even though it's encrypted? Or do you send a battery of little bots? Does the AI send a bot to me? It looks at my stuff. It finds how my stuff contributes to the eigenvectors. It only reports back a very limited amount of data. Anyway, you guys, the AI guys out there, applying all of these things that you're doing now in a world where people own their own data, giving them the maximum privacy is really interesting technical challenges out there, just saying.
So changing course a little bit, one of the things that I found interesting about reading your bio is it seems like because of your parents, you were involved in computer science from a very young age, but initially in your career, you kind of moved to a few different places and then really blossomed at CERN. We've got a room full of technologists and entrepreneurs, scientists, researchers, artists. What career advice would you give to yourself looking back at the young Tim Berners-Lee before you were Sir Tim Berners-Lee? What career advice would you give?
Wow, that's a biggie. I think, so first of all, I was really, really lucky. So, no, I was born in 1955. Wow, is that... So, yeah, that was a date, that was a time. And so my parents then were actually, they were developing the first computers. Mum was one of the first computer programmers. So together they were building the Ferranti Mark I, which came out of Manchester University. That environment was already, because they realized that one computer could, IBM were building one computer and ICT were building another computer. Didn't matter when you would program it, because all of the computers were equivalent because of the Turing result, because of the imitation game. One could imitate the other. So the fact that all computers are equivalent mathematically means that what it does, when you program it, is really just up to you. It's up to your imagination. And they already, in those early days, in the 60s, they realized that that was just, they thought, wow, we can do anything with this computer. We will have it translating from English to Russian and back by the end of the week. And of course, it was a disaster. And lots of things they tried to do. School timetabling. It'll be able to solve the school timetabling problem just like that. No, it couldn't. Wasn't powerful enough. Just ranging, so that they discovered things were really, really hard, even for a computer. But the spirit of that was massive. So I think whatever you do, now you may not be a computer scientist, you may end up just using a lot of computer science, or you may be a computer scientist, you may end up in places like medicine, in drug discovery. So computer science is really, really important. You've got to have that spirit. Whenever you look at a computer, remember it's something that you can code. Remember that it's not just what you get out of the box. And teach that to your kids. Teach that to your girls as well. That it's just that the computer isn't what you are given when you open it up. It's not like the fridge. It's like it can be, unlike the fridge, it can be anything you program it to be. I think nowadays, then computer science wasn't a thing. I couldn't do computer science. I did physics. So now I would say, I should have done a master's in computer science, but there wasn't one. Now I would say, yeah, you should. But you don't have to do a PhD. I didn't actually do a PhD. Some of you should, and go deep in one area. That's a tremendous luxury. Some of you shouldn't. You should just go connect to all kinds of things. So comparing back then, when academics tended to be certainly, in England, everybody did a subject. I did physics. Now, there are so many subjects, and the connection between them is so important. I think a career where you go seriously into this thing for 6 years, for 10 years, and then you use that as a base, and then you go seriously in this direction, and then you establish another base here, and then you go seriously in this direction for another 5 years. That means that at the end of 17 years, you've got 3 places where where you understand things, where you're able to help different communities, and then you can use that as those 3 places as a tripod to erect what you're actually going to finish up getting fascinated in. That seems to be what people seem to be doing now. Do not feel you have to just do one thing. Doing 1, 2 things or 3 things is the norm, and that's why, and that's how we get such a diversity of people, diversity of views, diversity of knowledge, and we need all that for solving the ridiculously difficult problems that we have.
All right, Tim, in our last minute together, you've got the audience here. What's your call to action for everyone for standing up and protecting a free and open web and being part of Contract for the Web?
Well, sign up for the Contract for the Web. But also, so specifically talking to your coders, do some open source code. Even if you're working for a completely closed military, commercial lockdown project, spend a bit of time doing open source, helping those open source guys, or maybe see if you can find a way to spend most of your time working on open source code. When you're doing things in open source code, or whatever you're building, remember try to imagine the unintended consequences that will happen when you make your design. You've probably all had the experience of designing a UI which you thought was brilliant, showing it to real people, and they go, "What? It doesn't work. Sorry." And then you have to, you have to realize, okay, where they're coming from, I need to do it differently. That's just with one person. What's really weird is when on a social network people get together, you think they will get together and they will collaborate, and then 90% of them do, but 10 of them end up really fighting. 10% of them work. So it's looking at what does a group do? What do the crowds do that are really interesting? Do web science. Use lots of social sciences, well, technology to do research, but try to think about the unintended consequences and then plan intended consequences that will be where people will be constructive, will be collaborative, and will creative, whether individual creativity will add up to be a force to make the world a better, nicer place than often it is out there now. Thank you so much.
All right, let's all thank Tim Berners-Lee. Thanks, Tim. Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, Nico? Access and inclusion. How can we inspire the next generation to solve these problems and to create a new form of leadership in the digital age? Well, we can start by inviting our moderator, Matt Gooderick of Reuters, to come up here and discuss with our panel the Dean of IESE Business School, Franz Heukamp, the Chief Financial Officer at Siemens Building Technologies, Mariana Porley, and the 2000